Oh, hello. This is Tak Chung from Walk with Tak. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to bake bread. Now, you probably wonder, why would I doing a bread video when this is supposed to be all about wok? I started to bake bread about 3 years ago. One of the main reasons is because my wife loves bread, and I thought it would be a good idea that if I can fill the house with the nice smell of freshly baked bread. Since then, I have been baking bread regularly. In fact, I just baked some this morning. I really enjoy the process. So over the past several years, I have developed a very simple and straightforward process in baking bread, and I call it a bread template. I thought it's a good idea, again, for me to demonstrate the utilities of a template in cooking. When I first start baking bread, people would tell me you have to measure everything exactly down to the last decimal point of ounces or in grams. Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you by using template-based baking. You don't have to. There are only some critical points you have to pay attention to. This is the kind of bread that I like, that I have worked on over the past couple years. It has a nice crust, but the crumb is soft. As in the case of my fast cooking system, efficiency is critical. So I also apply the same principle in baking. The first thing I want to emphasize is the ingredients. Of course, flour is the most important ingredient. I have learned that in order to create the kind of soft area crumb that I like, I need to use bread flour. I purchased this bread flour from Sam's Club. It is amazing how inexpensive it is. This is a 25-pound bag, but it costs less than $7. I usually make 4 loaves of bread, and I most of the time give them away. People love homemade bread, and it is a great way for me to connect with other people. In the beginning, I used to knead the bread by hand, but now I use a KitchenAid stand mixer. I love my KitchenAid stand mixer. This is a 6-quart stand mixer, and it is the type that the bowl can be lifted up. This is a great feature, particularly you are using a lot of dough. The yeast is the most important part of the ingredients in baking bread. I purchased my yeast from Sam's Club as well. They has a 2-pound package that costs only $4. Within this package, there are 2 1-pound bags. They come in a vacuum pack package, so they have a pretty long shelf life. After I open them, I store them in a bottle in the refrigerator, and that's usually good for about 1 year. However, the potency of the yeast will gradually decline, so toward the end, you need to gradually add more and more to the dough. I use approximately 5 cups of flour to make 4 loaves of bread. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of yeast. And then I follow by adding 3 tablespoons of sugar. This is then followed by adding 3 teaspoons of salt. Other than the yeast, the sugar and the salt is optional, and you can add different amount based on your personal taste preference. Once I have all the dry ingredients added to the mixing bowl, I use a spatula to mix them up. For this template, I'm going to add egg to the dough. Because I like a soft and airy crumb, so by adding egg will create this texture. I first crack 3 eggs into a large measuring cup, and then I add hot water to the egg. I use the hot water directly from the tap, and it seems to be well okay, but of course you can use boiling hot water as well. However, you need to be careful not to use water that is too hot, because that might kill the yeast. The total volume that I'm going to use of the egg and water mixture is about 2.5 cups. I add the water a little bit at a time to the flour mixture while I was stirring them. I try to incorporate the water into the flour to make sure all the flours are being incorporated. This is about the right amount of water to add. I don't want to add too much water that it have water leave at the bottom of the mixing bowl. At the same time, I don't want to leave too much dry flours at the bottom either. It turned out that this is the critical step of the process because if the dough is too wet or too dry, it will not rise properly. This is the step where observation and fine adjustment is necessary to make sure that the bread will turn out right. The next step is to knead the dough in the stand mixer. So I put the bowl into the stand mixer and lock it in place. With the bowl still in the bottom position, I install the dough hook and then I raise the bowl. This stand mixer has 10 speed settings. I set the speed setting to number 2. That seems to work the best. This turned out to be the critical step in the baking process. You notice that once the stand mixer starts to work, some of the dough stick to the bottom of the bowl. In this case, it suggests that the dough is too wet. I already have a measuring cup ready to have some flour in it. I slowly add a small amount of flour into the bowl. As you can see, once I add the flour, the dough starts to dry up. There comes to the point that the dough has incorporated enough flour, it completely lifts itself away from the bottom of the bowl. This is an indication that just the right amount of moisture now is in the dough. You should also notice that the bowl actually cleaned itself because the dough have picked up any other doughs that might attach to the side of the mixing bowl. Usually by this point, it is about 1 to 2 minutes since I have turned on the stand mixer. Then I will continue to mix the dough or to knead the dough for another 8 minutes. The total time is not important. I try to knead the dough for about 10 minutes, but you do not want to over knead it either. At the meantime, while the dough is kneading, I'm getting ready for the rest of the equipment. I take out the baking pans, which I purchased from Dollar Tree for $1 each, and they just the right size for me. I coat the baking pan with a oil spray, and I usually use Pam. I also take out the kitchen scale and have it ready. You should notice that now the dough is ready, and if you look at the mixing bowl, there's hardly any dough stick to the side of the mixing bowl. This is a good indication that the dough is at the right texture. I use a handheld scraper to remove the dough from the mixing bowl. You should notice that the dough is very sticky, but I easily solve the problem by sprinkling it with some flour. The flour makes the dough far more manageable, and now I'm going to divide them into 4 different portions. I divide the dough into 4 parts, and I shape them into a ball, and then I weigh them, and I make adjustment by moving doughs from one ball to the other to make sure all of them is somewhere between 330 to 340 grams. This is important if I want all the bread to come out about the same size. I then place the ball of doughs into the baking pan that has already been coated with oil spray. I put all of the pans into the oven. My oven is about 10 years old, and it comes with what they call a proof setting. What it does is that it sets the temperature of the oven around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. This is about the right temperature for the yeast to grow. Of course, you can do it in room temperature as well. I set the proofing time for 45 minutes. I'm only going to do the proof once. In the past, I have experimented to prove it multiple times, but it doesn't seem to make any difference, particularly in the type of bread that I want to make. As you can see, by about 10 minutes, the dough already rises significantly. And by 40 minutes, I decided that the rising is good enough, so I stopped the proving. I have learned in the past the bread could rise too much and cause the crust to form a pocket on the top. In the past, I used to take the dough out of the oven and then I will turn the temperature of the oven to 350 degrees, and I will warm up the oven first before I put the bread back into the oven. This is the instruction provided by all recipes. And then I said, why should I waste the time? So I leave the bread in the oven and I set the temperature directly to 350 degrees and start baking right away. And this turned out to work perfectly fine. And I set the time for 30 minutes. To me, the time is not important. The key feature is that I want to make sure that I have a relatively brown crust. So this is the template of my bread. I like the characteristics of this bread because of the softness of the crumb, but it also has a nice crust. I have done a lot of experiments, try and errors. In the beginning, I used to bake a bread that I can throw across the room and break a window. Now this bread is a template. I can use this same template, make modifications to create many different kind of bread. For example, I can create a raisin bread, I can create a rosemary bread, and the possibility is limitless. Cooking at its best is experimentation. Go back to my flavor chasing the property of my fast cooking system. You want to find the best flavor and texture. The template serves as a guide to help you to make changes to fit your individual needs as well as availabilities. Cooking is only fun when you can experiment and you can create. And ultimately, the most wonderful thing about cooking is that it provides you tremendous pleasure when you find the flavor that you want. For me, this aspect of cooking is very important in my life because it gives me an opportunity to be creative, to have control of what I want the outcome to be. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you would like to receive notifications of my future video postings. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like icon below because that will help me to extend the visibility of my YouTube channel as well as to reach a wider audience. I'll see you next time.